Hello everyone, my name's Dr. Paul Rose and I am the co-chair of the IUCN Species Survival Commission Flamingo Specialist Group. One of the aims of the Flamingo Specialist Group is to bring the wonderful world of the flamingo closer to you folks. We are all living under the COVID-19 restrictions and many of you might be missing contact with the flamingos that live near to you, those in your local animal collection perhaps. Or, if you're lucky enough to live where the flamingos live in the wild, those birds that you might see out in natural spaces. So today, I'm going to bring the flamingos to you. Join me on a virtual safari where we'll go to East Africa and learn more about two of the species that live there. If you're looking for something to do with the children, if you're homeschooling and need some inspiration all about biology and geography, then enjoy this short presentation where the Flamingo Specialist Group is going to bring the pink birds right into your front room. Welcome to East Africa's Rift Valley. A rift valley is a split in the Earth's surface, creating numerous depressions and chasms that can be many thousands of meters deep. The Rift Valley stretches down East Africa and passes through countries such as Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Somalia and Malawi, amongst others. East Africa's Rift Valley is one of nature's wildlife hotspots, and it contains many famous examples of biodiversity. Some of you might be familiar with the migration of the wildebeest, these large antelope that travel in herds of up to over 1 million animals. The soda lakes of the Rift Valley, these alkaline wetlands, are home to two species of flamingo. Sharing all of these natural resources with the wildebeest and many other species of herbivores and top predators like the lion and leopard are two species of flamingo, the lesser flamingo and the greater flamingo. And these two species of flamingo are able to inhabit the alkaline soda lakes of the Rift Valley because they forage and feed and select for different foods in totally different ways. Let's take a closer look at these different flamingo species. Here's the first species, and the most numerous. It's the lesser flamingo, a dainty bird that weighs around about 2 kilos. It's the smallest species of flamingo, but it's lesser only in name. Lesser flamingos can occur in flocks of up to 2 million birds and have a global population of around 4.5 million birds. Lesser flamingos, as is suggested by those population numbers, are incredibly sociable. They do everything together as a group. And the groups that flamingos occur in are called a stand when the birds are standing around feeding, resting or preening, or a flamboyance when the flamingos are performing their courtship display. Lesser flamingos have these beautiful dark faces with almost maroon-like bills. They have bright pink legs and these beautiful carmine red wing feathers that you can see on the photograph. Lesser flamingos also have, like all of the species of flamingo, bright black primary wing feathers. And these black pigments in their wing feathers give the bird strength so the wing feathers don't wear out quickly. And here's the other species of flamingo, the greater flamingo. Greater flamingos are the largest species of all 6 types of flamingo, and they're also the most widespread, being found across Africa, into Asia, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. The greater flamingo is a mainly white bird. It has these lovely pastel pink bills, bright pink wing feathers, and in the breeding season, a tinge, a blush if you like, of pink over their body feathers. Greater flamingos also have bright pink legs. The greater flamingo can coexist with the lesser flamingo because it is a more generalist in its feeding strategy. It doesn't select for the same types of food as the lesser flamingo, and it has a slightly different bill structure, meaning both species avoid competition. So what do the flamingos look like in this wetland home in the East African Rift? Here you can see some lesser flamingos foraging in a shallow soda lake. The shallow water is really important to the birds because it allows them to wade and filter feed for their favourite foods. So whilst I said a rift valley created these really deep splits in the Earth's surface, some of the lakes are relatively shallow because of the geological processes that are moving the rift apart. The lakes preferred by the flamingos are the shallower ones because these lakes enable the blooms of algae and crustaceans to be collected by the birds easily. East Africa's Rift Valley contains some of the world's oldest and deepest lakes on Earth. The deepest lake is Lake Tanganyika, which is around 1,400 metres in depth. But most of the lakes that the lesser and greater flamingos prefer, at their deepest point, are only around 3 metres deep. However, flamingos are not always tied to the shoreline for their feeding and foraging. They will, and do, often go swimming. All species of flamingo like swimming, and the lesser flamingo particularly will collect a large part of its daily food allowance by swimming. These are greater flamingos that have gone for a paddle, and the greater flamingo can sometimes forage in the same way as ducks, upending under the water's surface. Without these shallow, highly productive lakes, the flamingos wouldn't be able to gain their beautiful and characteristic pink colour. All of the food that flamingos eat stains their feathers red, orange, pink, yellow, and in one species, shades of purple too. Flamingos, without the foods that they eat, are actually white. And you can see some colour changes in this video of some adult birds that are the darker, more brighter pinks, and the young birds that are white to grey. It takes a long time for a flamingo to develop its complete adult set of pink feathers, and juvenile birds, youngsters, remain various shades of brown, grey and white until they're around about 4 years old. The lesser flamingo is an incredibly specialised feeder. It has what we call a deep-keeled bill. That means the filtering materials within its bill are tightly packed together, and this allows the lesser flamingo to filter feed for tiny plant material and microscopic algae that can be invisible to the human eye. The flamingos pump their tongues many times per second as they sieve out these microscopic organisms. Because the greater flamingo is not as specialised as the lesser flamingo, it will eat plant material and animal material. It can be more widespread in its range. So whilst large numbers are found in the East African Rift Valley, they can also be found in more humanised environments too. This is a photograph of greater flamingos in salt flats from a salt extraction plant in Spain. The greater flamingo is known as a shallow-keeled flamingo. Its bill isn't as deeply curved as that of the lesser flamingo, and it doesn't contain the same dense filtering material. This means the greater flamingo doesn't collect the teeny tiny microorganisms that the lesser flamingo does. It's selecting for larger dietary particles, things that the lesser flamingo cannot collect. Therefore, the two species avoid competition. The Rift Valley lakes are all alkaline in pH. These lakes can be dangerous to many life forms. Lakes like Lake Natron and Lake Bogoria, for example, are incredibly caustic, of a high alkalinity, and this high alkalinity can strip human skin. In some parts of the Rift Valley, the lakes are less alkaline, so the flamingos can share their home with other species, such as these little ducks that are called Cape teal. And around the edges of the lakes are savanna grasslands and acacia woodlands that are home to an array of other species, such as this giraffe. Lesser flamingos and greater flamingos help fertilise and keep the lakes full of the algae that the flamingos depend upon. They also are mini engineers, moving the substrate around, which allows other animals to find food. And here you can see the diversity of wetland life that can exist alongside of the flamingos in some of these more hospitable Rift Valley lakes. Avocets, the black and white birds at the back, various other wading birds and ducks can all live with the flamingos if the conditions are optimal. But it's only the flamingo that has developed this amazing filtering mechanism to collect food from the water. If the lake is really hospitable and not of a high alkaline pH, the flamingo might be sharing its home with some incredibly large neighbours, such as these common hippos. The flamingos here are exhibiting a range of different feeding behaviours. Some are foraging at the surface of the water and others are foraging nearer the bottom. Flamingos can display a range of foraging behaviours based on the wetland they are in. But the filtering mechanisms within their bills restrict them to certain particle sizes. That's why the lesser flamingo is so specifically evolved for the tiny microorganisms and really small floating plant material because of this densely packed filtering mechanism, whereas the greater flamingo can eat a wider range of prey. The flamingo's plumage will change colour in and out of times of breeding. The adult bird in the middle of this photo has flushed a really deep pink. That's a sign that this bird is getting ready to start performing the amazing courtship dance of the flamingo, where all of the birds gather together and move in a synchronized manner to see who in the flock is ready to start nesting. Flamingos are not always the most colourful inhabitants of the wetlands that they live in, and even the greater flamingo, at around 150 centimetres tall, is not always the biggest. Here is a saddle-billed stork, a very large wading bird that can be found in some of the flamingo's wetlands. And like the flamingo, the red and yellow patches on the bird's bill directly come from its diet, using the same types of pigment. The East African Rift Valley experiences wet and dry seasons, and these wet and dry seasons change the chemical composition and the pH of the lakes. In the wet season, with more rain, the lakes are diluted and therefore are more hospitable to a wider range of animals. They can use the lake's water for drinking. Even the flamingos cannot drink the incredibly high alkalinity of some of the lakes, like Lake Bogoria and Lake Natron, for example. Flamingos rely on the hot springs that feed these lakes, where the water is fresher, for their drinking and bathing. And at these types of wetlands, they might often be disturbed by other species that are also using these fresher patches of water too. The remote and sometimes inhospitable nature of the flamingo's wetlands means they are relatively protected from predators. But flamingos still flock together when they are at the shallowest areas of the lakes near the land, and this allows for more eyes to watch out for danger. Flamingos have a long flight distance to get themselves into the air, so it pays off that everybody looks out for predators. It's when a bird is foraging by itself, like this individual is here, that predators are most likely to strike. That's why flamingos are generally found in groups, more eyes to watch out for danger. And some of the predators that will attack flamingos include these marabou storks. They are the tall birds in this photograph with a heavy dagger-like bill, which can prey on the chicks and the eggs of flamingos, as well as of the adult birds too, if they are of a weak or poor condition. And you can see in this photograph a tight flock of greater flamingos swimming away from the shoreline as the storks have approached. Other predators of the flamingo include the African fish eagle, which will scare flocks of the birds when they are at the shoreline drinking and bathing. And the African fish eagle does that to see which flamingos are the slowest to get into the air, and therefore that will be the weakest bird in the flock and the one that's easiest to catch. Both lesser and greater flamingos have to spend a great deal of time preening. As the birds wade around and swim in the caustic water of the Rift Valley lakes, the feathers can catch salt crystals from the water itself, and these salt crystals can affect the waterproofing of the bird's plumage. So bathing and washing and preening of the feathers is a large part of a flamingo's daily routine. The flamingos will gather at the edges of the lake where the water is freshest from the hot springs that run into the lakes. They will beat their wings on the water's surface and they will scoop water over their body using their head and neck. The flamingo has a preen gland at the base of its tail, and it will use this preen gland to spread oil throughout its feathers, which waterproof them, keep them streamlined, and allow the bird to stay warm and dry. All of this cleaning of the feathers pays off, because the brightest and most beautiful birds in the flock are going to be the most attractive to other birds during the breeding season. Flamingos are incredibly democratic in their courtship display. The male and the female dance together in their ritualized display patterns. The male and the female choose each other, they both rear their chick, they both incubate their egg, and they both partake equally in the breeding season. I hope you have enjoyed this short video that has explained the lives of the East African flamingos in a bit more detail. So whether it's the dainty lesser flamingo or the taller, paler, greater flamingo, both are examples of evolution to an extreme environment, and the flamingo contains a whole range of characteristics and behaviours that allow them to be really successful in this unique part of the world.